Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review for Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. But before we go ahead and get on into the review, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Thursday, Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box below for links to all of my social media, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning book giveaways. Spinning Silver is a standalone adult fantasy book that is loosely based off of Rumpelstiltskin, the Grimm fairy tale. And I've had this book on my shelf for the longest time and have just not read it, and I don't know why. And I read Uprooted by her several years ago, and I actually really liked it. Naomi Novik has a beautiful writing style, and she also tends to write very fairy tale-esque books, and Spinning Silver was definitely no different. Spinning Silver takes place in a land called Lithfis, and it is a fictional world, but you can definitely tell that she drew influences from Russian and Eastern European folklore and settings and things like that. And she also incorporates religion from our world into this book because one of our main characters, Miriam, is Jewish, and she talks a lot about Jewish history, Jewish holidays. So if you're one of those people that really doesn't like when authors combine a fantasy world with elements from our real world, then this might not work out for you because she definitely does that. It threw me off just a little bit. Because I feel like if you're going to create a fictional world, you can also create a fictional religion that just draws inspiration from other religions. It's just kind of weird when you combine the two, but that's what she did. This is a multiple person point of view story, and we have three main characters, and then we also end up getting the point of view from a couple of other side characters, which doesn't happen until I feel like mid part of the book. So at the beginning of the book, our main character is Miriam, and Miriam is the daughter of a Jewish moneylender, and her father is not very strict about trying to get back the money that he lent out, so people end up taking advantage of him, which drags the family down into poverty. And Miriam gets so fed up with it that she kind of starts going around collecting the money on her own and brings the family back up into wealth because she finds that she's really good at it. So she tries to get the money back with interest. When the people can't pay her back, she'll be like, okay, well, I'll take 3 of your pigs. And then she goes and sells the pigs. Slowly, over the course of several months, years, her family actually becomes very wealthy. And it's kind of ironic because her mother comes from a family of moneylenders, and her grandfather is very wealthy. So her grandfather kind of sees Miriam's talent and encourages her to keep doing what she's doing. And then we have a character named Wanda, and Wanda comes from a very abusive home, and she actually ends up coming to work for Miriam's family as a way for her family, Wanda's family, to pay off debt to Miriam's father. And then we follow Irina. She is the daughter of a duke, and she was never really thought to be important or do much. And the only reason she was important would be to see how high the station they could marry her into. And she ends up getting engaged to the czar of this kingdom. So she has the potential to be a queen. And she gets engaged to him, and then we actually learn way more about what's going on with this czar. This czar has some evil darkness going on with him that Irina has to combat, and there is a whole other plot line with regards to that. Additionally, in this world, the winters have been getting slowly worse and worse every year. And in this world, there are these fairy-type creatures known as the Sterek. And the Sterek, they don't have a good relationship with humans, and they will attack humans. And they live in this magical land beyond Lithfis that only these fairies can access. And they are ruled by this king, and this king somehow finds out that Miriam has this ability to turn silver into gold. So he says, I want you to turn silver into gold for me. And he starts leaving her chests of money to do and threatens her family if she doesn't do it. She's able to transform the money. And then he says, if you do this for me on the third time, then I'll make you my queen. So she does. And then he escorts her to his kingdom. And this fairy king is not nice, not polite, not trustworthy, and we find out more about him and how he's contributing to the current state of Lithfis. So there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of different plot lines that Naomi Novik did an awesome job of weaving together. So I do want to go ahead and talk about the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like. So the first thing that I liked was the atmosphere of this book. This is the perfect book to read during winter time. It is so atmospheric. It takes place in, like I said, this Eastern European Russian type setting, and it's cold and snowy, and I just could feel it when I was sitting on the couch reading, just feeling the snow and the cold. And oh, some of the ways that she described the fairyland, the winter woods was just absolutely gorgeous. So I love the atmosphere. I also liked how much of a fairy tale that this book felt like. So it literally felt like I was reading a Grimm fairy tale or a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale. I don't know how she did it, how she just encompassed that fairy tale like storytelling, because I was thinking about when I read Uprooted, I don't remember it being like that, but it's been several years since I read it. So now I'm even more curious to go back and read Uprooted or read her other fantasy series to see like how she adjusted her storytelling to fit this type of story. I also really liked how she developed the fae and the fairy world and just all of the lore that went along with it. I don't know if she drew from actual Eastern European influences. I did look up the antagonist of this book, who is this demon. I did look that like name up to see if it was some sort of like folklore, and I didn't get any results. So I'm assuming she made it up. So I really don't know how accurate like some of these fantasy elements are to actual Eastern European folklore. But I really enjoyed how she created the fairy world, the fairy kingdom, and especially how she allowed the fairies to have like their own set of customs. And it was really interesting the dynamic of Miriam, our mortal character, had with the fairy king, because they were constantly in like the state of limbo. Communication was an issue because, you know, the meaning of something that Miriam said might be taken differently by what the fairy king said, because the customs are different in his kingdom. And I just like how she addressed and created these different worlds, these different customs, kind of emulating like the different nations we have in our world, and how, you know, things can be perceived differently based on different cultural ideals and customs. Now, there were several things that I didn't like. The first was that I felt that there were too many points of view. So the first 3 points of view, Miriam, Wanda, and Irina, definitely were necessary. And I was like, those are good points of view. But then she starts throwing in all of these other points of view. Like we get Wanda's little brother, we get Irina's servant, we get the czar. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's too much. We don't need 6 points of view, especially 3 points of view that aren't really even relevant. And not only that, but she would tell the story from, for example, Irina's point of view. And then she would jump to the czar's point of view and retell the same thing from his point of view. So it just became really repetitive. And I hate that, because I already read about what happened. I don't need to read about it again from someone else's point of view. Like it's not going to change what happened. And additionally, there was no really indication of whose point of view we were reading from. So you would start a new chapter and you would have to kind of figure out by context who the heck's point of view you were reading from. Normally, when you have multiple POVs, there could be like at the beginning of a chapter, like the character's name, like this is Irina, this is Wanda. And not only that, but you would be reading a chapter and there would be a break in the chapter and then it would switch point of views, which was aggravating as hell. Because there was at one point I was like, for a whole couple pages, I'm like, who the heck character is this? Like, which woman is this? And it made it even worse because, in my personal opinion, I felt like none of the female characters really had distinct personalities. Like, they were all very similar to me. They were all very quiet, calculating, smart, just strong women, which is awesome. But when you're reading from three different characters' point of view and the author's not telling you whose point of view you're reading from, you kind of need some way to figure it out to make it easier. That's really my biggest gripe with this book. I also felt like it was entirely too long for the type of story that it was, and it could have been broken up, like I said, by cutting out those unnecessary point of views, repeating scenes that we'd already read about, but also I just felt like it took too long to get to the action and there wasn't enough action. So this book could have included a lot more literal action between the antagonist, which is a demon, and our main characters, and then the fairy king. And there was a little bit of action, but in the whole of such a large book, it just wasn't enough. This book was very slow. And additionally, I personally had trouble connecting with any of these characters. I love a good female character. I love a good character in general, but if there's not something that super, super grips me, whether it's something I can relate to in my own life, whether it's something emotionally that really hits me hard, or just a character that I can kind of identify with and see myself in, then I'm going to struggle with this book. And this is what happened with Spinning Silver. None of the characters I identified with in any shape or form. And unfortunately, that lowered my enjoyment quite a bit. All in all, I enjoyed Spinning Silver. Like, it wasn't a bad book. If someone were to ask me, is this a bad book? I'd be like, no, it's a good book. It's got a great plot, lots of folklore, lots of fantastical elements, super atmospheric, great writing, cool characters. But I didn't really enjoy it that much. And it's all me. It's 100% subjective. I just failed to connect with parts of the story and some of the characters. And because of that, when I'm giving my ratings, like I do include that. So I ended up giving Spinning Silver 3.5 out of 5 stars. I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for a good standalone fantasy with like good fairy tale like elements and great atmosphere. It definitely delivered. And then hopefully you'll be able to connect with it more than I did. Okay, you guys, that is it for my review of Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Let me know in the comments if you have read this book and what you thought of it, and I will see y'all soon in another video. Goodbye!